So
Okay.
Since we started chatting, I've been telling a lot of people about how excited I am about your business. As you know, I never thought I'd be so interested in commercial insurance, but I am. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Kalepa and how you became involved in starting something in this space.
Sure. Certainly it's been an eventful path to get to where we are today and arriving in the insurance industry. I think something I found interestingly over the past couple of years working in the industry is the fact that there actually are such things as insurance families of people whose parents and grandparents have been here. I'm not part of that. I come from a very different background. I'm a scientist by training, used to do physics back in the day, and decided to switch into technology and financial services, and now, working on trying to apply what I've learned over the years on cracking this problem in insurance. Why insurance, and why is it that we are doing what we're doing at Kalepa? I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the fact that insurance is an industry that is by no means sexy, but serves a pretty important purpose, right? And the purpose is one where the past 2 years have been probably exemplary on what it is, which are things happen, right? Bad things happen to people, to businesses all the time. And when insurance works well, it makes those people and those individuals and those businesses whole. And we believe that that's something very important, right? It allows society to function, allows people
Well,
to take
to
risk.
give one example, as a beneficiary of medical healthcare insurance, I think my bill I looked up when I had my various surgeries, it was about 8 million. I had about $8 million of terrific care at Memorial Sloan Kettering, but I paid a couple $100. So thank God for insurance. it saved it
100%.
saved my life in two senses.
Yeah. It's certainly, when it's that visceral at the point of, medical services and any type of intervention, it is essential.
Someone's business too. I mean, someone's business, burns. It's their life.
Exactly, it's their livelihood, right? And then it's their livelihood. When people are working and things go wrong, this can be the difference between them paying the bills and feeding their family and not being able to do so. And ultimately, that's something that's important. But sadly, there's a lot of potential left between what it could be when insurance works the way it should, and where it unfortunately operates in many cases, which is it's one place where, I think it oscillates between being the third or the fourth most disliked industry, right? When you look at
What's the
industries,
average NPS? Well, yeah. What is
exactly the lowest NPS industries, number one is typically telcos or airlines, which is unsurprising. And then banking and insurance are right after that, right? Which is,
I bet car dealerships aren't terrific, having recently went through that.
yeah, car dealerships have to be
fun. No fun. No fun.
they have to be up there, right? Which is, it makes sense, right? When people make this purchase, in the hopes that they'll never have to use it, right? It's a product where you buy it and you hope you never have to use it, and you use it on the worst day of your life. Like when the worst things happen to you, that's when you use insurance. So it's an industry that kind of by definition, some sort of structural issues. But when it works great, right? When it works, people basically can take risks, people can innovate, people can do things differently because they know that there's a safety net. That when things go wrong and they only
A little
quickly will.
shout out to Nathan Gupta, who I told you I need to,
Yeah.
who would tell me, insurance is the umbrella that allows you to dance in the rain, which is a
You
great
told me
line.
that, and I've used it now 3 times. I mean,
Nathan,
I owe dinner to
in
Nathan.
this podcast.
I told you I was going to shamelessly steal that, and I
Yes,
did
yes.
because it's beautiful. It's very poetic, but it's true. I mean, it is true. It is what allows people to take that risk because they know that there's someone out there to catch them if they fall. Unfortunately, that's not the way it happens in practice. In practice, it's an adversarial relationship, right? In practice, a business is looking for insurance because they need it, because by law they might require it, because in order to operate as a contractor, whatever it might be, they need to have insurance. And the business believes that everything they say is going to be used against them in raising their prices and limiting their coverage. And frankly, in the other side of that transaction, the insurance company is expecting the same. It's a game, right? Ultimately, these two parties should be collaborating to lower this risk. But in reality, they're playing a game with different set of facts, and they're trying to get those facts across in the most, let's call it, favorable way possible. And that's not the way it should be, right? Because what happens is it ends up being a lose-lose situation, and it cascades, right? People have terrible customer satisfaction. The insurers don't want to pay claims. Ultimately, this takes a long time to do. It's slow. The pricing is high. Businesses don't get coverage, right? So you have this massive industry that should be taking care of people and being an enabler of innovation, of risk taking, really powering the economy, right? Which is the ultimate goal that the insurance industry.
Lubricating commerce, allowing people to
But
build
it's far from that potential. And our take is, we can help. And there are a number of ways that this industry can be improved. And many have tried, right? InsurTech is nothing new. And over the past decade, there have been many companies that have tried to bring this product into digital channels, which is great. It's a better buying experience. It's something that people are more used to seeing in there. However, they have failed to get to the core of what it is insurance. Right? At the end of the day, what is insurance? Insurance is making sure that when things go wrong, you can take care of people. The way you do that is by understanding what are the things that could go wrong, what are the things that could go right, and let's make sure we protect them for that. Sounds simple, obviously, easier said than done. That's the problem we're trying to crack. We're trying to use technology to make sure that the insurance company that's looking to provide coverage to this business and the business that's seeking to get coverage are looking at the same set of facts, at a single version of the truth. So there's no gamesmanship. They're focused on finding a product and a solution that will take care of what they're trying to. And that really is what our technology does. We build this platform called Copilot that enables them to operate with the same set of facts.
In as much detail as you feel comfortable going into, some of the stuff that I found so interesting when we were chatting and getting kind of into the nitty gritty were sort of the current dynamics of, people being asked questions for which they, whether it's roof or, other things. If you can give some anecdotes in as much,
100%.
I think it's really telling and interesting.
The example you mentioned, which is one I share with you, Andrew, but there are many like it, is exemplary of that, right? How does this process work today? Right? You're a business. You save some money. You want to start your business. You're a contractor. You want to do work, right? You have to get insurance because it's required for you to be licensed for you to do it, right? And you go talk to a carrier. They'll ask you a bunch of questions. Why? Partly because they have to, right? Partly because they want to understand what is it that you do so they can give you the right coverage. So all of that makes sense, right? And the process might be more difficult than it should, but it comes from a good place. Unfortunately, the incentive structure there is fundamentally broken, right? One of the questions they ask of contractors is, do you do work in roofs? Are you a roofer? Do you do any roofing work? Makes perfect sense why they would do that, because if you're an insurance company, you look at the actuarial statistics and you see that the folks that get in roofs are riskier than those who don't. Not hard to imagine why, right? Roofs are dangerous places. You can fall from, you can drop something from. You can drop a hammer and it falls on someone. Well, that's
gravity is in play more than most.
Gravity is gravity, whether you like it or not, right?
You're a physicist, you know that.
For those roofers who operate in the moon, there will be different type of risk. But for those of Earth, you do know what happens there. And ultimately what happens is, okay, if you are a roofer, you get a higher price. But why? Because you need more coverage. Because again, if something goes wrong, which it's more likely to happen in a roof, you should. So all of that makes sense, except for the fact that when you set up this incentive structure and both parties look at each other as adversaries, what you're telling the roofer is, if you check yes in this box, you're going to charge.
Turns out no one does roofs.
No one does roofs, right? 97% of contractors say they don't do any roofing. So, all the roofs in the United States fix themselves. Well, of course, no one believes that, right? The insurance company knows that clearly this question is not getting them the information they need. But what is it that they can do, right? They can basically say, well, I can just go and follow this contractor and see all the work that they do. Okay, that's not very practical. That can get expensive pretty quickly. If you want to charge a roofer $2,000 for a policy, you cannot spend $10,000 following them around. That just doesn't make any sense, right? So ultimately what they do is, well, it's hard for me to know if they are a roofer or not. I can try to do some research. I can ask questions. Or, you know what? I'm going to charge everyone a little bit more and hope that I'm getting fewer roofers than roofers. Well, that doesn't help anybody, right? That basically means that if you're not a roofer, you're paying too much. You're not getting the coverage you need. If you are a roofer, you're going to get in trouble when you basically have a claim, and now that is the fight. Now it's a fight. Are you a roofer? You didn't have that. No one wins, right? What we're trying to do right now is let's take away that incentive. Let's operate with a set of facts. If we tell you, hey, you say you're not a roofer, but here is the permit that you have for that HVAC unit you installed on a roof 2 weeks ago. You need coverage for roofing, because if you do another one of those 3 weeks from now and you drop something from there and you hit somebody,
it's better for them. It's better for them too, because if they're saying this, then I'm sure there's a penalty.
Exactly. I mean, the worst case scenario, frankly, is
they're not covered.
Well, you're not covered. Exactly. If you're getting a legal dispute,
you for dropping a hammer on their head.
Exactly. You're not covered, and it's just going to be the only people who are going to make money out of that are the lawyers. That's right. in that transaction, the people who make money are the lawyers. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is, if you are a roofer, you get roofing coverage at a fair price. If you're not a roofer, you shouldn't be paying for the mistakes of all the roofers out there, right? Like, ultimately, you should get that. And you extrapolate that to everyone, right? You're trying to really keep business what they need.
I don't know how much, if at all, you've read Charlie Munger or
oh yeah, I mean, I've read the almanac.
You have? Okay, I haven't read enough, so I mostly am just the guy on these silly quote sites. But one thing I love, which is not even prose wise the most poetic, but I think is brilliant, I pulled it up. Never ever think about something else when you should be thinking about the power of incentives, right? This idea of aligning incentives to me is so powerful in designing businesses that make sense for the stakeholders involved.
100%. And I see technology as a force that can help realign those incentives in ways that were impossible to do before, right? There are many such, outside of the world that we're operating in insurance, which obviously is very incentive driven, but many instances where something that was a trade-off before, where you had to trade A for B, speed for quality. And then you take technology and that ceases to be the case. Right?
Well, let's get into that a little, because I've been imagining how Copilot works essentially, and I think I'm close. But for instance, in the example you gave, I can imagine lots of ways to essentially create a computer-enabled human who can then ping reviews, ping the database for permits. What are the kinds of things, and not to reveal anything too proprietary about Kalepa, but that you're sort of empowering the agents, the brokers with, so they're sort of have like superpowers, and you have a dual brain working on it, one mechanical, one wetware.
Yeah, I mean, the underwriter has a tough job, right? When you think about the power of incentives here, it's interesting how the function of the underwriter has been designed. Right? You want to take the economist perspective in this, right? You're telling these folks, on one hand of the equation, you need to be a salesperson, because you need to go understand your customers' problems and then find a solution for them and sell them a product, in this case, an insurance policy. So tell them, please be a good salesperson, and with all the implications of what makes a good salesperson. Then on the other side of the equation, you tell them, but you need to make sure all your I's are dotted, all your T's are crossed, and that this is squeaky clean. You have to check everything and such.
You're evaluating.
So you have to be a good actuary. You have to be a good actuary and a good accountant.
As a recruiter, I can understand.
Yeah. Right? No, man. And when you think about that, right, you tell them you have to be a great salesperson and you have to be a great accountant and actuary. Right. And you think through a dinner party and you say, who are the two people who are least likely to be talking to each other there? Those are the archetypes, right? Like, you want to be, stereotypical here. Those are, and then you have to do both, and you have to do well, right? So they have tough jobs. The underwriter has a really hard job in trying to make sure that they're playing both detective and salesperson at the same time, right? And ultimately, that's where we can help, which is, historically, if you have a human that is trying to do this alone, well, they have to make trade-offs, right? You can, every second you spend being a detective is a second you're spent not solving your customer's problem and selling them a product, right? Well, that's exactly where technology excels, because technology can take what technology does well, what the AI does well, does things in parallels that a human would have to do sequentially. Doesn't get tired and look at all the details here, and then really bring that to the underwriter, give them those superpowers, give them the Iron Man suit, right? This is what you need to know to actually basically make the best decision. Bring your judgment to the table. And we think that symbiosis or symbiosis is actually, it's not unique to insurance. I think my perspective is the companies that master this,
whether it's healthcare, whether it's law,
financial services, retail, defense, ultimately the power of AI comes from making sure that you have strong AI human collaboration going forward. And those companies that do that well are going to be the companies that are going to solve real problems.
Until there's sort of artificial general intelligence, which then who knows?
Well, yeah, exactly. I'm talking, in at least the next 20 to 30 years, that's there. When AGI is around, I think we have different questions, right? Our AI overlords might not want us around.
Yeah, you might have to have a policy for the first policy.
Yeah, exactly.
AGI. I know it's very complex. So I guess one thing that we also talked about, which I thought was compelling in our discussion. I remember I was driving. I wonder if that would have changed my policy. Knowing how much I talk on the phone. Don't tell my auto insurer. But we talked about this specific sort of new product of insurance relating to human trafficking, where you actually had there be a serious sort of a new problem, not a new problem, but more of a attention paid, which is good, and that there was sort of and this is what I was sort of passionate about. If you do it in a crude way, it's very unfair to businesses or the underdogs. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, 100%, right? I think, again, going back to the power of incentives, sometimes the incentive to get people to do things that we want as a society to do is insurance. Basically, if you're trying to do something that we find very questionable as a society, you're going to have a hard time having people that are going to agree with you that that's a really good thing to do. And sex trafficking is a tremendous example, right? Sex trafficking is something that obviously is absolutely outrageous and atrocious. And because of that, fortunately for us now in the society we live in, well, society is penalizing that very aggressively, right? In the United States, the kind of, fines and penalties that you have for any type of activity around sex trafficking is growing exponentially, as it should. Right? So that's phenomenal, right? So now, if you take that from the perspective of the insurers in this opaque world in which commercial insurance operates.
And this is a lot of hotels or sort of like...
Exactly. You're looking at a hotel and you're trying to find out, okay, am I underwriting a hotel that could be dealing in some type of sex trafficking? Well, when you're looking at that without transparency, you make assumptions that are unfair, right? What are the assumptions? Well, okay, they say a lot of this happens in cheap motels, in bad parts of town. Okay, and a lot of the time you might be right, that is the case. But what you fail to happen is if you're making the decision on how to underwrite this risk based on that and not based on the full facts. Why? Because it's costly to get all the full facts. It's difficult to get all the full facts. Well, you make mistakes, and you make mistakes both ways. You basically are looking, okay, well, the 5-star hotel that has sex trafficking should be penalized, despite the fact that they're a 5-star hotel. And the motel in a bad area of town that is well run, that has no business whatsoever in sex trafficking, that is actually doing right by their customers and by their community, should not.
It's so powerful to me because it essentially you're able to use technology to take what would be maybe not necessary, but the obvious and easy choice of a society to say, well, it's probably this, we're going to make a broad generality, to actually say, no, you have no, you can build a great business that serves the community well, even if, you're starting out in a part of town that's, socioeconomically less well off, and you won't be penalized, at least in this way, for that.
Definitely. And that's what I mean. It's kind of when people ask us what we do is, it really is sunlight. Right. What is Copilot? Copilot is sunlight. Copilot is basically bringing transparency. And people are like, oh, you cannot build a business on transparency. Well, that is the problem. The problem here is these two parties don't have the same set of facts. And the same set of facts in a way that is, unequivocally correct. Then they make different decisions. You completely remove that incentive to make it a game And not only that, you make it fair. Like if this is actually what's happening, this is what we're going to do. And the reality is that actually both parties win, right? There are very few instances. Sure, the insurer is making money from this, and we're working with the insurance companies, we're working with the businesses. The reality is that the industry is so far off from what it should be that there's so much opportunity for both of these parties to do better off and work together, right?
There's so much.
And
This speaks to me so much, and then maybe we'll wrap because I don't want to get on my soapbox too much. But there are some occasions I think in life where making decisions based on quote unquote your gut might be good. Mostly not. Like they do studies on judges, right? Sentencing guidelines after having been fed at
lunch,
lunch
yeah,
or something. It's crazy, and this is
oh, yeah,
people's
100%.
lives. Hours, years in jail based on hours of how much food is in one's stomach. It's like, as humans, I think it is wise and just and compassionate to allow for computers under our supervision to make a lot of these decisions.
And to help, I mean, and to know, I mean, I think
To
the
help.
important component, the component is to know when, right? I mean, the wisdom there is, it's not either or, but both, right? You both the expert underwriter, the person who has experience, who's done this, um, they bring a ton to the table. I mean, these people bring judgment, they bring a lot of nuance. This is a hard job, right? Um, but of course, there are parts that the machine will do well and that can assist them. And frankly, it is not unique to insurance. I mean, you see this, as you mentioned, with judges, you see it with doctors, right?
That's
Radiologists
what I
doing
think
the
of.
same thing
Yeah.
when looking at diagnostics. And, you've seen it in other instances around.
Flying planes. I mean, driving. My car is pretty sophisticated in terms of helping me drive. Now, I wanted to get a little closer to back up, so I was outside zone. It was like no. In fact, last thing, and I think this is funny. The way I felt with my car lately is that there's a feeling that they'll let me drive my car until I do something stupid. They're like, let me take over, you silly human. They're like, meh, meh, and they're like, I'm just stopping you. So as it gets better, as autonomous driving gets better and better, there's a little, which I like, and I think is positive because frankly, as a human being, I like driving a little, but I like doing creative things more and talking to humans. So I'm happy if like I can, write something or draw something while I'm being driven to meet you at coffee. Okay.
At the end of the day, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're all we're trying to do is to solve the problem in the best way we can, and we're using the tools that we have at hand. And it just so happens we have some powerful tools at our disposal now. But you have seen in other areas, simple tools can help too, right? Doctors adding checklists went a long
I was
way.
going to say that checklists are incredibly effective.
Right, 100%. And it's like having the checklist is just you're basically addressing something that has nothing to do with the doctor's training or ability, but just normal human fallibility. You are worried about other stuff. I think the exact same way about AI. AI is a tool. AI is a tool that is there to help people do whatever it is they're trying to do better. In our case, it is for these underwriters that have a hard job to do so they can actually protect these businesses that need coverage, right? And it's a challenging job. It's a difficult thing to do. Well, we're bringing a really powerful tool to help make that better and ultimately make the entire transaction better. Right? Our take is if you want to transform insurance, and kind of going back to the first piece around, why we do this and how we connect that back to what we're trying to do, you ultimately need to understand risk. That is what insurance is. Insurance is the business of risk. We're trying to use technology to understand risk, to realign that core foundational transaction. We think that is the foundation upon which you build the edifice of a new insurance industry, right? Once you crack risk better, now you have something that you can basically continue to expand upon, to put online, to make it easier to purchase. But at the end of the day, if you're not making sure that you're covering the business for what they need with a price that is fair, and you're doing that in a manner that is consistent, that is correct, that is transparent, you're gonna have a hard time, right? You're fundamentally not changing things from the status quo.
Well. Thank you so much, Paul. I'll just end by saying, I'm really excited about what you're doing. Hopefully, by the time we terraform Mars and we start to build small businesses, you can use your physics degree and you can have part of the equation be the gravity differential, so that by then also Kalepa, because it will be such a big company in such a short time, it'll just be the default. Like, who are we going to have write the first commercial property insurance on Mars? Of course, we're going to Kalepa, right?
I would certainly expect that will be us, and in that case, the roofers will have no problem. In that case, I guess.
No problem. That's right. I love it. All right. Well, thank you, my friend. I will see you soon. And one thing, tell us thoughts on New York. Like, just as simple, if you had to give someone one reason why, not even business, right, living in New York is worth it, and why, what you love about New York. What's the thing you love about New York? This is a little PSA to get the best people here. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question actually I get asked all the time. Obviously, a lot of our peers are going elsewhere these days, but I mean, I love New York, and I think the one thing that I like about New York is anything you want, you can find here, right? That's what does it for me, right? Like, whatever it is you're into, you can find it in New York, and there are very few places in the world that can say that.
I think that's very well said. We'll come up with a snappy jingle like that, put on a T-shirt, and I actually know we're gonna have on the show, I think, Eric Adams, a head of communications, a friend of mine, who has told me that he's up for it. So you might get attribution for that in the same way our friend Nathan did for
There we go. We pay it forward.
Anything you want. It could be like a NY thing, a New York thing. Anything is here.
Pretty good.
All right. Thanks, folks. Thanks for listening, and catch us next time. And where can people find you? Where should people look for you and look for Kalepa?
Yes, Kalepa.com. You'll find us there.
Spell it for us, because unlike Spanish, English is not phonetic and there's crazy spelling. So how do you spell it?
Kalepa.com. We're named after the Kalepa Ridge Trail in Hawaii, which beautiful place that we recommend everyone to visit.
Love it. As long as you go to New York as well. Okay, everybody, and we're out.